Good evening, Steelers fans. Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Of course, I'm coming to you from my apartment here in Dallas, Texas, to bring you the latest breaking news that the Pittsburgh Steelers have made their signing along the defensive line, and it is Daniel Ekuale, formerly with the New England Patriots. We'll be breaking down his profile today, how this affects the Steelers' draft plans, how this affects the defensive line rotation moving forward. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Of course, yesterday we put out the latest when it came to the Aaron Rodgers situation. That video is still on the channel. Nothing has really been updated since that video yesterday. So if you're looking for the latest surrounding Aaron Rodgers, yesterday's video, you can still check that out. But the newest signing here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's one that I think is pretty sneaky good here. Probably not a name that a lot of people know. It might not, excite too many people out there, but I think, this is a very solid signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Daniel Ekuale, he's 31 years old, and you might be thinking, Jack, 31 years old, he's only had 1 year of being a starter, what the heck? Well, last year was his first year starting in the National Football League, and it was his best season in the National Football League. He did collect a sack last year with the New England Patriots, started 16 games for the Pats last year. Now, I won't say that he's like a game-wrecking presence or anything like that along the defensive line. I think he's more of a replacement-level starter / rotational kind of piece, but he's a veteran. He's got powerful hands. He's a pretty darn good run defender. One of the higher grading run defending defensive linemen in the NFL last year, especially among guys that were still available in NFL free agency. And after the team released Larry Ogunjobi earlier this week, in the first week of NFL free agency, and they didn't pick up anybody else, they needed to really make a signing here to pair with, of course, Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton along this defensive line. Now, the fact that they got somebody of this caliber and instead of going after a guy like maybe Calais Campbell tells me that the Steelers are definitely going to be prioritizing DT early on in the 2025 NFL draft, all right? And they've been doing a lot of homework on the guys in this year's class. Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, all the players, Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. There's a lot of players that are going to be available when the Steelers are picking at number 21 in the first round. And right now there's a lot of talk about the Steelers maybe diving, tipping their toe into the quarterback waters. I don't think that's going to happen in the first round unless the Steelers miss out on both Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. I think the Steelers would rather, go quarterback in the middle rounds, whether that be round 3, round 4, round 5. And I think they'd rather get a day one starter at a position of impact, specifically in the trenches, because the last 2 years, Omar Khan has taken an offensive trench player, an offensive tackle, traded up for Broderick Jones in 2023, then Troy Fautano last year in 2024. Now this year, I think they're going to be moving their focus to the defensive trenches, because that's kind of the way that the Howie Roseman kind of philosophy goes, and that's the kind of style that Omar Khan and of course, assistant GM Andy Weidel are trying to bring here to Pittsburgh, is a big focus on trench play. And I think that, they're going to be really putting a lot of focus this year on getting the right interior defensive lineman to pair with Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton. And then when it comes to Ekuale, he's going to be somebody that can come in and he is going to be trustworthy. He's got starts under his belt in the National Football League. He can play the nose tackle, but he can really play wherever you want along the interior of the defensive line. If you want him to play 5 technique, which is where Larry Ogunjobi played last year, he can do that even at 310 pounds. If you want him to play the 3 tech, he's not the best pass rusher in the world, but you can ask him to do that. And then, of course, because he's 310 and he's a pretty darn good run defender, if you're asking him to play in the nose, he can do that as well. He did that with the New England Patriots last year. So I like the signing. I'm guessing it's going to be a 1-year deal. We don't have the details on his contract at the time of me recording this video, but I think that it's going to be a 1-year deal, and it's going to be very reasonable in terms of the price tag that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have to pay for Daniel Ekuale. And, I think that they're probably going to be drafting that defensive tackle probably to start week 1. Or at least try to earn that spot in camp when we head to Latrobe in August. And, whether that's Kenneth Grant, whether that's Derek Harmon, whether that's Walter Nolan, whether that's somebody else along the interior that the Steelers end up drafting this year, I do think Ekuale will probably start camp as the presumptive starter, but, the rookie is going to have to pretty much take his spot if they want to establish themselves as the week 1 starter. Now, still, there's still people, that the Steelers could bring in along the defensive line that are still out there. Isaiah Loudermilk had a pretty decent season for this team last year. He's still available in free agency. Armon Watts, who was with this team 2 years ago, had a really good season in a rotational role. Ended up going to the Patriots last year, and Ekuale actually played over Armon Watts. But if you wanted to go get Watts, you could still get him to fill out the rest of this rotation. You still got Montravius Adams. You still got Dean Lowry. You drafted Logan Lee last year. So I think right now the Steelers, after this signing, unless they bring in like a Loudermilk or a Watts, somebody along those lines, I think they're going to be probably good to head into the NFL draft this year. With the guys that they've got. And, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Keanu Benton, because personally, I would like Benton to make that move to 3 technique. He played the nose last year, and, I think that because he's got so much disruptive potential, he's got quick, fast hands, very disruptive player when you put him in a position to be disruptive, but at the nose tackle spot, he takes on a lot of double teams, man, and it can be tough for him to take on those double teams because he's not like the biggest defensive lineman in the world. He's just over 300 pounds. So as opposed to a guy that's like 310, 320, or above, that can really take on that weight, take on the extra man, and take on those double teams and eat up that space. Keanu Benton, I think, is not really playing in the position that he should be playing. So I'm hoping that, the Steelers are going to be drafting somebody that can fill that nose tackle spot, because Cam Hayward can't fill that spot, or at least you don't want him to. You want him to be a disruptive player as well, and then the same thing goes for Keanu Benton. So personally, I would rather the Steelers get a big-bodied nose tackle like Kenneth Grant. So I think at this point, my preference would be to draft Kenneth Grant if he makes it there to the Steelers pick at number 21. But, because Keanu still has a lot of experience playing the nose, because he's more than serviceable as a nose tackle, if you're drafting Derek Harmon, who has compared his game to Cam Hayward, if you're going to go out and get Walter Nolan, who's a little bit of a lighter defensive tackle who would be playing 5 technique, I think if you make either one of those moves, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round, then Keanu is probably staying at nose tackle. So I think that, depending on who they end up landing at number 21, if they spend that first round draft pick on a defensive tackle, is going to be determining exactly what Keanu Benton's role is going to be next season. So very interested to see what they're going to do in the draft. I know that they're doing a lot of research on a lot of different interior defensive linemen, guys that are bigger like Kenneth Grant, people that are lighter like Walter Nolan. They're keeping an eye on a lot of these guys, and I would expect right now probably the highest probable chance of a position being taken by the Steelers in round 1 is going to be a defensive tackle. Now, there's still other positions they could go. I could see them going running back if they fall in love with, say, Ashton Genty or Omarion Hampton. And then also, of course, if you miss out on Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, you got to be looking at the quarterback position as well. Another thing to keep in mind with the draft is they don't have a second-round pick this year. So, I think that we should be keeping our eye on a potential trade down. And, I think if Kenneth Grant is there at 21, I think he's the type of player that they would take and just stick and pick. But if he's off the board and you're choosing between Derek Harmon and Walter Nolan or somebody else that they really like at that position, maybe Darius Alexander out of Toledo, maybe you trade down and you get an additional day 2 pick in the trade down scenario. There's a lot of things the Steelers could do. But right now, it certainly feels like Ekuale, the guy that they're bringing in now, or Ekuale, the guy that they're bringing in, is going to be a rotational piece. He's going to be kind of a mentor for the rookie they end up drafting in the NFL draft. And it's certainly not a move that's going to prevent them from taking an interior defensive lineman early in this year's NFL draft class. So thank you guys so much for making it to the end of today's show. I think it's a sneaky good signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it really does help out this defensive line depth, and I think that it gives the Pittsburgh Steelers the ability to take a defensive tackle that they really, really like to even start day 1. Whoever they end up taking at number 21 in the NFL draft this year. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Of course, Aaron Rodgers watch continues here on Steelers Talk. So whenever Aaron Rodgers ends up making his decision, whether he goes to Pittsburgh, whether he goes to the New York Giants, whether he goes to Minnesota, or whether he decides to retire, whenever he makes that decision, we will be going live on this channel in studio. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications if you haven't already. Really do appreciate all of your guys' support. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.